The Armata tank has become a real challenge for NATO tank builders. Design officers of Western countries were discouraged by the tanks passing into service, which has the most advanced features in terms of mobility, protection and firepower. That is why tank builders have had to adjust their current projects on future tanks and prepare them for a possible confrontation with the Armata on the battlefield. But are the efforts being made to catch up to the Russian engineers successful? At the Euro-Satori exhibition, which was held in June in France, German weapons company Rheinmetall presented a promising sample of a 130mm gun, L-51, which is aimed at combating modern armored vehicles, including Russian main battle tanks MBT T-14 and the Armata. The latest modifications to the T-90 were also presented. Manufacturers are affirming that the gun will be between 10% and 50% more efficient than the previous model of the 120mm gun, the L-55, which is widely used in the army. However, the manufacturer has not reported on the method of estimation for the effectiveness of the gun. Despite the increase in the firepower of the gun, its weight remains almost the same. The shutter with a vertical locking mechanism weighs about 3 tons and the trunk has a weight of 1,400 kilograms. This result is achieved through the use of high-tech materials and optimal design that allows for the new gun to be used on existing tanks of the latest modifications, such as the German Leopard 2A7. This means that the weapon can be distributed widely. It can also be installed on the projecting German-French tank, the MGCS, which is anticipated to be placed into service after 2030. To increase the armor penetration for the gun, new, longer and heavier projectiles were developed. Armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot APF SDS, as were separable trays and high-explosive air-bursting munitions HEABM. Despite the manufacturer's declaration of the significant increase in the firepower of the guns, experts have expressed doubts. The sample that was presented is designed for manual loading, and experts have confirmed that the rapidity of fire cannot exceed more than 6 to 8 rounds per minute. The T-14 has an auto-loader which provides for the rapidity of fire of about 10 to 12 rounds per minute. Regarding the increased efficiency of the gun's shot, as claimed by Rheinmetall, it must be noted that the round's DM63 for the previous gun model, the RH-120 L-55, which is installed on the tank Leopard 2, has a penetration of up to 800mm of homogeneous armor. Therefore, an efficiency of 10% in the L-51 model yields 880mm. In comparison, Armata's 125mm gun, the 2A82-1M, provides armor penetration of between 850mm and 1000mm. The 152mm gun, the 2A83, which has been tested in the 90s and into the century, will be installed on Russian tanks in the future. Hit 1, 24mm of homogeneous armor. It is known that field tests of the German guns were not carried out and that the gun has not been set on a real tank. Therefore, it is hardly possible that a 50% improvement in the performance of the German gun can be said to be achieved. The Russian tank crew is set in a separate capsule protected by a modern, multi-layer counter-heat protection effect armor. In addition, a dynamic Armata Malachit protection system and the active protection system Afghanit provide protection against all existing anti-tank weapons. Finally, according to Armata's developers, the mounted machine gun, which obtains data from the Active Electronically Scanned Array AESA radar, is able to protect the tank by knocking the flight of anti-tank missiles and changing the trajectory of the rounds or damaging commutative jets. It appears doubtful whether the new German gun can defeat such a fortress at this stage, even with a possible 50% increase in its efficiency. Of course, much depends on the situation awareness systems used, the ammunition, fire correction systems and electronic warfare, but it will take years or decades to develop such a combat complex and corresponding strategy of its application. It should be kept in mind that Russian engineers will continue to design more sophisticated armaments. Since it is possible to now assert that the Armata is currently the most powerful and protected main battle tank in the world, Rheinmetall's affirmations that the gun can defeat the T-14 are seen as a marketing ploy in an attempt to attract the attention of potential customers to the objective problem of the need to combat the modern Russian tank. The arms concern also raises the question of the expansion of financing for such developments. Clearly the Western, or at least the European tank building industry is behind the Russian industry. Nevertheless, the US military technologies could pose a significant threat to Armata. as demonstrated by the Future Combat Systems FCS and familiar doctrines. The US military strategists are betting on the interaction of unmanned and mixed combat systems operating in 3 dimensions: ground, air, and space. According to this approach, the target should be defeated from the zone located beyond the line of sight of the enemy. For example, a promising lightly armored 20-ton tank, the XM-1202 Project FCM, equipped with a 120mm gun XM-360, was supposed to launch the mid-range munitions MIMKE or MIMCE to a distance of 12 kilometers and targeted with drones, Class 1 T-Hawk or 4-Fire Scout. It is therefore more likely that in the coming years we will see more Armata-orientated systems of weapons and even so-called Armata killers.
One of the more visible signs of the technological revolution sweeping the Russian armed forces is the proliferation of battlefield robots being tested for use with the ground forces. The range of programs suggests this is a high priority for the Russian Ministry of Defense, and the existence of such weapon systems is indicative of the importance being placed on implementing the digital revolution in the armed forces to make them capable of waging net-centric warfare relying on small units operating independently without a well-defined front line. The most important robotic system under development for the ground forces is the 6-ton class Uran family of tracked vehicles, which include the Uran-6 minesweeping vehicle and the Uran-9 combat vehicle, whose armament includes a 30mm Tu-A72 automatic cannon, Ataka laser-guided anti-tank missiles, and Igla or Verba short-range anti-aircraft missiles, which collectively allow it to engage all battlefield targets. Russian industry also has smaller vehicles under development, such as the Nerechta and Platformer M systems, whose modular design allows them to be armed with machine guns, automatic grenade launchers, anti-tank guided missiles, and RPGs. There is even a miniature, backpack-portable, assault rifle-armed battle robot named Strelok that is capable of climbing stairs, and miniature quadricopter drones armed with grenade and flame launchers. The most ambitious initiatives include a robotic version of the BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicle named Udar and the remote control feature built into the Armata family T-14 tanks, which enables individual T-14s to be controlled by other T-14s through the provision of high-volume data links which give complete access to the sensors, weapons and controls of the vehicle being controlled. Instead of relying on satellite communications, which combines long range with vulnerability to jamming and hacking, Russian battlefield robots are controlled using short-range communications of no more than a few kilometers in range. The above-named and other systems are in advanced stages of development and troop testing. There are reports that some of the robotic weapons platforms were deployed for battlefield testing in Syria. While the reports of them spearheading assaults on jihadi positions in Syria while under control by Moscow-based operators are likely exaggerated, battlefield robots are being developed to perform 2 kinds of missions. The comparatively small size of modern armies means that stable front lines will be rare in future warfare. Even the small in size Donbass theatre of operations has a front line consisting of checkpoints, fortified positions and garrisoned towns, rather than continuous trench lines, which presents both sides with opportunities for infiltration. It means that every unit has to worry about providing its own security and protection, both when occupying permanent positions and on the march. And the robots can provide that capability by performing surveillance and patrolling roads to discover ambushes and roadside mines. The other mission is overcoming prepared defences, including in urban terrain. The lethality of modern weapons means that offensive operations against opposing units in strongpoints or urban terrain are likely to suffer many casualties. While such resistance can be reduced through massed artillery or aerial bombardments, such tactics also cause unacceptable losses to civilian population and damage to infrastructure. Armed battlefield robots can perform armed reconnaissance by compelling defending units to reveal their positions by prematurely opening fire, clearing minefields and obstacles and destroying individual strongpoints. The development of a modern armour force, deployment of the Ratnik individual soldier suite, and the work on battlefield robots is aimed at ensuring the Russian ground forces can prevail not only in mobile armed warfare, but also in the positional slugfests that have characterized the recent armed conflicts around the world. One of the key sectors of Russian military modernization is its tank fleet, which still includes many unmodernized T-72B and T-80U tanks. In order to close the tank quality gap with NATO, Russia opted to upgrade the T-72B to the T-72B3 standard, a modernization that yielded a modern tank comparable to the T-90 at a fraction of the cost of buying a new T-90. The T-72B3 tank, which entered service in 2011 at the rate of about 200 a year, and which became widely known thanks to the annual tank biathlon competitions, was intended to be a stopgap measure until the T-14 of the Armata family became operational. According to statements by the Uralvagonzavod, Russian procurement plans entailed the purchase of 2,000 T-14 MBTs. These plans appear to have been modified due to several factors which appeared in the last 2 years. The first was the crisis in Ukraine and the heightened state of conflict with NATO. The crisis raised the need for a truly modern MBT comparable to NATO's tanks to become operational as quickly as possible. While the T-72B3 can be fairly described as a modern tank, it is still inferior in some respects to the latest NATO Leopard 2A6 and M1A2 Abrams tanks. Secondly, the basic T-90 design was also rapidly becoming dated, which reduced its international competitiveness, as evidenced by the success of Ukraine's Aplot tank in the 2011 competition in Thailand, where it won over the T-90. While the T-90 has enjoyed considerable export success, including major contracts with India and Algeria, it is now facing the prospect of being eclipsed by more recent designs from China and even Ukraine. Third, even though Ukraine proved unable to fulfill the Thailand contract in a timely manner, producing only 5 tanks a year in 2014 and 2015, the Russian leadership has to consider the worst-case scenario of Ukraine ramping up a plot production for domestic use with NATO's assistance. Fourth, Russia's economic crisis, caused mainly by the rapid drop of oil prices, means that the ambitious military modernization plans face the need of being as cost-effective as possible. Fifth, the T-14 is a radical design featuring many revolutionary technologies. It is a technologically risky project featuring many as yet unproven technologies, with the possibility of developmental delays. Since its design is very different from earlier Russian tank designs, its introduction would also require considerable changes to the training doctrine, as tank crews trained to use Russia's current tanks would be ill-prepared to use the T-14. As a result, it would be unlikely that Russia could field a sizable and fully operational T-14 force before 2020 at the earliest. The change to Russian procurement plans induced by these factors became apparent in the summer of 2015, when the Russian MOD announced its T-90 fleet would be modernized to the T-90AM variant. This version of the T-90, known by its export designation of T-90SM, was developed in recent years apparently in response to the T-90's aging and the emergence of viable Chinese and Ukrainian competitors, and was not intended for adoption by the Russian military. However, the need for a quicker and less expensive alternative that would fill the gap until the T-14 became available compelled the Russian MOD to take a second look at the T-90AM, which has the advantage of using already existing T-90 hulls, is a mature project with few developmental risks, and whose familiar layout means Russian tank crews can readily transition to the new design. At least one T-90AM with the 2A82 125mm tank gun developed for the T-14 is undergoing tests at Nizhny Tagil, and upgraded vehicles could be delivered to Russian units as early as 2016 if the Russian MOD desires it. Therefore, by 2025, Russia's tank fleet is likely to consist of about 1,000 T-72B3 tanks, 400 or so T-90AM, and about 500 T-14s, with their numbers steadily increasing. This force would have both qualitative and numerical superiority over any conceivable combination of Russia's opponents at that time.